Aloha, everyone. Welcome. I'm really excited about today's class because we're going to be focusing on an area of the body that doesn't get a whole lot of attention. The base of our core, which you might know as the pelvic floor. I prefer to think of it as the pelvic diaphragm because it really works just like the upper part of the core, the actual diaphragm of the breath. And so bringing awareness to an area that's often forgotten can have profound effects, right? Like things don't need to rewire and change so much. Sometimes it's just a matter of having the awareness there, and then the magic can happen right away. So we'll be using the breath and we'll be using our movements to help bring awareness to the base of our core. And I want to start with just a little bit of breathing to plant the seeds and help bring your attention there right away. So you're probably familiar with how the diaphragm works. When you inhale, it flattens down, and that's why your organs push out, your belly pushes out. And then as you exhale, it gently domes upward. Well, the pelvic diaphragm does the exact same thing at the base of the body. So let's start with some breathing, focusing on our intra-abdominal pressure, which I'll cue in a moment. Make sure you're sitting comfortably. I have a little cushion under my hips or a blanket, so feel free to grab that. And then take a moment to be a little dramatic. Play with dropping your pelvis forward and then rocking it back. And do that a couple of times, and let the movements get smaller and smaller until you have a sense of where a level pelvis is. And to maintain level, there should be the slightest amount of effort. It's not a gripping, it's not a tightening, but it should feel like, oh, okay, like the light is on, my core is awake. So take a few rocks like that. And then once you find where you think is neutral today, without any judgment or worry, pause there and begin to notice your breath flow. And I'm going to mimic the breath with my hands once again. So as you inhale, you might start to feel this downward pushing sensation. You can bring the awareness down to the base of the pelvis, and perhaps you can feel that downward pushing there as well. It's okay if you can't. There's not a whole lot of awareness there for most of us. And then as you exhale and the breath exits the body and the diaphragm domes up, maybe there is a sense of the ever so gentle like lifting of the pelvic floor. And take a few breaths just to witness this and release any urge to manipulate it, right? To like push down actively or draw up actively like a Kegel exercise. We're not trying to force anything. We're just shining our awareness on what naturally happens in a healthy core as we breathe. Maintaining this neutral pelvis brightens the core, and so you might notice as you inhale a sense of a little bit of pressure building at your center. That's what we call inter-abdominal pressure. And then as you exhale and there's that just gentle lifting action, you might even feel like your legs slightly pull together or your sits bones slightly pull together, and you feel a little taller through the spine. We'll take a couple more breaths to explore. And then we'll be turning to the left and making our way onto our bellies. If you haven't yet spread out a blanket, it actually is essential today because we need like a slippery surface for our legs to be able to move onto. And you might need an additional blanket for your knees when we get to the kneeling postures. For our restorative pose at the end, either a chair, a couch, or a couple of blankets will be handy, and everyone will need a strap. So once you're set and ready, you can hit play on the first track, make sure it's set to loop, and then turn to your left and make your way down to your belly. And let's see if we can mimic what we were doing seated. So that starts with finding a level pelvis by tipping forward and tipping the pelvis back. And when I'm on my belly, I find it helpful to just visualize the relationship between my pelvis and my rib cage, trying to find that place where they're parallel to one another. And just like seated, there's just a little bit of brightness. There is a little bit of work. You feel slightly toned without being tight or gripping. And once you find that place, start to watch the breath flow, noticing that pressure building on the inhale. Maybe you can even start to witness that pelvic floor starting to push slightly down on the inhale. Try to feel what happens as you exhale. And we'll dramatize it a little bit by adding on our legs. So keep the pelvis neutral, but as you inhale, start to slide the feet a little bit wider, kind of like a snow angel. And then as you exhale, start to allow the feet to go back to where they are, and see if you can feel that drawing together of the legs and the gentle lift of the muscles at the base of the pelvis. Try it a few times. Welcome, Annapurna. So exciting to practice with you live. And the next part is optional, but if you're feeling a little extra space in the spine as the legs come together, it can be fun to start to add in a cobra spine as the legs come together, and then inhale, let the legs softly reach out as the spine comes down. And then the exhale, the movement is initiated in the legs, but as the deep core activates, perhaps you can effortlessly lengthen the spine forward, or even play with a little bit of side to side reaching. There's no rules here. And the next time you're lifted, pause there for a moment. Drag the hands back so they're underneath your shoulders. Try to breathe smoothly so you're not holding your breath. And play with gently dragging the feet together as the spine sways from side to side, noticing a sense of how the work in the legs rises all the way up the spine. They're not separate, they're connected. And then slide the left hand out, push into the right hand so that you roll onto the left hand side. You can make any adjustments with the arm or the legs so you're comfortable here. And we'll take our gentle side body rocks and rolls to massage, connecting with the breath. And then let the movements get smaller and smaller, and start to straighten out the legs if you have bent them. Flex the feet and lift the top hand so it actually is a little bit harder to stay on your side. The top arm can go wherever you want it to, but notice how you kind of have to balance here. We've got a side lying balance. And use your inhale to start to hover the top leg just a little bit. You don't want the outer hip to get tired. And then exhale, just like we did on the belly, let the legs come together and use that sense of strength to lift through the spine. And then inhale, release down, hover the leg. And then exhale, try to feel that rising up of both upper diaphragm, pelvic diaphragm, and notice how you can use that to lightly lift the spine. Play with this a couple of times on your own, nice and easy. You don't want the legs to get really tired. And the next time you're lifted, pause there and just notice the work that's happening at your center and around your pelvis, and try to maintain it even as you set your head down. So it's like you're working a little extra hard. Bring your right hand to the pelvis. We don't want anything to move here except the right leg. Bend the right knee and start to actually bring the top hand. It's really hard to do this. Bring the top hand to the floor to stabilize, but start to circle the right knee without moving the pelvis, and it should feel like it's limiting your range of motion. Like you should feel like, oh, I thought I was more flexible than this, and I'm not moving very much. And that's okay. That means some of our stabilization muscles are turning on. You should feel whatever you're feeling. That's perfect. But notice if you're feeling the work of stabilization in the core as you're moving the leg. And that's the body preventing the pelvis from moving. Takes a lot of work. Bring the right knee in front of you, and without relaxing completely, start to soften so the right knee can slide along the yoga mat heading towards your belly, but you might not get all the way there depending on how open the hips are, so don't expect to be flat on the belly. The forehead can come down if that's comfortable, and then we're going to reverse that by pushing down into the left leg and slowly letting the thighs drop back together using the strength of the core. And then eventually you'll get to a stopping point with the legs, but the spine can start to open. The right hand will circle behind you if there's not something right there like there is for me. And then continue the circle with the arm, so the hand comes in front of you once again, and we'll repeat this a few times with the breath. So we'll inhale as the leg slides out, not going for mobility, trying to still feel how the legs are connected to one another. And then as you exhale, push down into the left leg. Let that help you slide the right knee back and spiraling all the way open. Release any goal of getting the shoulder or arm to the floor. We don't want to over mobilize the spine. Let this be nice and easy. Repeat a few times on your own, as if your body's not a completely solid structure. You're just melting and flowing effortlessly. Not too much effort here as we just warm up. And the next time you start to slide towards the belly, let the right leg straighten out so that you can come onto the belly just as we were at the beginning of the sequence, and pause. The arms can do whatever is comfortable for you. And then we'll balance it out on the second side. So you'll be rolling away from me, but we're doing all the same movement. So drag the left hand back this time. Gently push into the left hand to roll onto the right side of the body. Bend the knees, soften the right side. Can relax for a moment. And then as you're ready, add in those gentle melting rocks. Forward and back, massaging out the foot, the calf, side of the thigh and hip, rib cage, shoulder, arm, hand, even the muscles on the side of the head, or at least the craniofascia. And then flex the feet, straighten out the legs, bring some awareness to the orientation of your pelvis. So finding that neutral pelvis that we've been playing with, and then start to push down into the right leg and inhale to hover the top leg just a little bit. And then as you exhale, let the top leg lower. Notice that sense of the diaphragm pulling upward. See if you can use that to side bend the spine effortlessly. And pulse here a couple of times, inhaling to float the leg and release the head. And exhale for that upward moving action. So gentle, so subtle, but it helps the spine lengthen and effortlessly lift. And the next time the head lifts, pause there. Play with hovering the left hand so it's a little harder to balance, and then keep all that strength as you set the head down. Set the hand down and bend the left knee going into the hip circles. Start really slow and small. It might be hard to feel at first whether the pelvis is steady. So you can even look at it or bring your hand there, though it makes it harder to balance. Actually, if you want to bring your hand there, you can just bend the bottom knee for stabilization. That's what I'm doing. And then I can feel that my pelvis is unmoving as my leg circles. And try to notice the work that is happening deep in the core to support you here. Notice any sense of limitation in your movement and be excited about that, because that's stability and we want that. Straighten the bottom leg, bring the left knee in front of you, keeping it bent, and bring the left hand in front of you. Slowly let the left knee slide open so you're heading towards your belly, though you might not make it all the way there, and that's fine. And then push down into the right leg and allow the left knee to slide back in. Once the hips stack, can circle the left hand overhead and then behind you, peeling open. It's okay to let that left knee lift a little bit if that feels good. And then let's just play between those two positions, sliding the knee out. Doesn't matter how far it goes. Instead, try to feel a lot of support, like you can pause at any moment and have control. And then push into the bottom leg to slide everything back in so you can spiral open. Sink it to the breath however you want. I've been enjoying inhaling as the knee slides out, so I can use that exhale to feel how the legs interact with one another and integrate up into the core and the rest of the body. Take a couple more on your own. And the next time the leg is starting to slide out, make your way gently back onto the belly, trying to control every moment so you have a sense of support and stability. And then once you make it to the belly, legs are straight back and just release completely so everything is nice and relaxed. You can do anything you want with your arms. Sometimes it's nice to stack hands and let the elbows come wide to make this more of a restful position. And let's come back to our breath. And try to feel not just the belly pressing into the mat, but also the back of the body expanding evenly. And how that gently pushes down on the base of the pelvis. And how the reverse happens as you exhale. It's almost like a vacuum is created that allows the base of the pelvis to gently lift towards the navel. And let's do one last round of our cobra pose from the beginning of class. So stabilize the pelvis. Find that neutral. That takes a little bit of work. Use your inhale to slide the feet wide. And then as you exhale, drag the feet together. And if it feels good, allow the spine to lengthen and lift. The hands can slide back or stay where they are. It really doesn't matter. This is more about the legs and the spine. Take a few pulses here, trying to feel how the work and movement of the legs is what allows you to wake up support along the spine. And the next time you're up, you can take a couple of gentle sways with the spine. It's a great test to make sure you haven't gone too deep into the back bend. If this feels hard or too sticky, come a little bit lower down and find a sense of ease and space. And then make your way back to center, push into the hands, and send the hips back to the heels, coming into Bhaktasana or a comfortable resting pose. If Bhaktasana isn't comfortable, sometimes cat pose is a nice way to release the spine. And then push down into the shins to slowly start to roll up. Send the hips forward over the knees, stacking one vertebra at a time. coming up to kneeling, and turn 3/4, or if you're already facing me, that's fine, so that you can see me. And I'm just going to demo a themed movement that we're going to be coming back to again and again. So from this forward position that we just did, where we're rolling up, the hands are going to come together and cross, and then they're going to lift overhead in a big circle. And so once you've seen it, you can try it on your own, coming down, gathering energy, drawing everything in towards your center, and then as you roll up, letting that express itself upwards. If you want to sync this with your breath, you can inhale for the drawing in moment, and you can exhale eventually as you come upright and allow that sense of release and ungrasping. Take one more. Then pause with the arms up, letting the shoulders relax, and let yourself become like a pipeline or a vessel, completely empty, completely spacious. And then bring the hips down, release the hands down. If you're following along with music, you can go to the second track. We are going to be doing a little bit of kneeling here, so if you would like to support your knees, you're more than welcome. And I'm going to stay 3/4 so that you can see more of what's happening with my body. You can be in whatever dimension works with your mat and your space. So let's come down to tabletop, and then slowly lower one forearm at a time, and then come back to the hands, and do this as softly and gently as possible, as if you were on sand and you didn't want to disturb the sand or make any kind of imprint. And the next time you come up to the hands, reverse direction, so the opposite forearm lowers first. And start to notice the sensation in the shoulders, maybe even the sensation in the back of the arms, the tricep area, the back of the shoulders, maybe even the low back. And the next time you're on your forearms, stay there and start to slide the right foot back without moving anything else. And we're going to take 3 of those. And so you can inhale to bring, actually let's exhale to bring the leg back in, and then inhale to slide it out. The next time the leg is back, pause there, bend the knee, and we'll play with some of those hip circles that we did on our side. And again, you don't want the pelvis to move here. So you might notice like the left hip jutting out and rolling around. Try to stabilize that. And usually I know I'm doing it right if my left hip is getting very warm, the one that is not moving, because it's working to stay still. Extend the right leg off to the side, setting up for Parigasana, so the right foot lines up with the left knee, and then slowly lift onto the hands. So you're in tabletop, but the right leg is out to the side, and gently start to rock forward and back. And as you play here, use your exhale to traction the foot slightly in towards you, as we've been practicing that sense of drawing the legs together to lengthen the spine. And then make sure you're breathing so that the inhale helps the diaphragm and the pelvic floor push down. So we don't want it to ever stay in that lifted position. It should be able to do both. And the next time the hips start to go back over the knee, we'll add in that gathering energy movement that we did on our knees before. So use your inhale to start to drag the foot in, push down into the left knee, gathering as you roll up, and then exhaling as the arms come overhead. And we'll take a few of these as you inhale. If you're feeling brave, you can slide the foot out a little bit, and then exhale that gathering action. Move at your own pace. You can even close the eyes if it helps you feel how the legs are interacting with one another. That's another way of looking at the sensation of the pelvic floor. How do the legs work together? How do they connect? And the next time you're up, pause there. Pin the outer edge of the extended foot down and let the arch of that foot lift, and just take a moment to feel that sense of connection through the legs, lightness through the spine. You can stay still, or if you want to, you can draw some big circles, but try to stay unmoving in the legs. Try to keep equal weight in the right foot and the left knee, and that's gonna demand a lot more of the core. And then you can bring the hands down, tuck the left toes under, send the right foot straight back like a half plank, and then just take a moment in a staggered down dog, letting the calves stretch a little bit, sway the hips from side to side. And then bring both knees down. We'll take a moment to rest. So that might be Bhaktasana, that might be cat pose. You can even slide forward onto your belly if the body's craving that. Connect with the breath, connect with that sense of stability. Annapurna's asking about turning up the sound. Looking into it, Annapurna. And then we'll repeat on the second side, starting with those slow roll-ups. So push down into the shins, send the hips forward, let the spine stack one vertebra at a time, hands come together, and then reach up and overhead, and be a little dramatic with this. Like, imagine that you're actually soaking in and gathering in all the energy around you, letting it draw into your core, and then you've absorbed it and you can get really, really open. You don't have to grip, you don't have to hold on. We'll do one more. And then we'll come down into tabletop and go straight into lowering the forearms. This time the left leg's gonna slide back. So sync it with the breath however you want. We've been exhaling to draw the leg back in. There's no right or wrong though, both have benefits. And the next time the leg is straight back, bend the left knee, keep the pelvis steady, and start to circle the knee. Remember, it's not about big circles, it's about keeping the pelvis steady. This is going to build a lot of strength in the hips, and strength is often what allows tight muscles to release. So if you're often stretching tight hips, you don't need to do that. Instead, strengthen them and all of the tension will melt away. Extend the left leg off to the side, setting up for Parigasana. You can line the arch up with the right knee and slowly walk the hands into a tabletop. We'll start to rock forward and back. And as we rock forward and back, try to notice how the rocking changes where you feel the sensation on the inner left thigh. We're not trying to overstretch anything here, so it can be helpful to push down into the right knee, bring the left foot in just a little bit so you feel how the legs are connected. The next time the hip comes over the knee, we'll slowly roll up, gathering energy, and then offering it up. If you want to sync it with your breath, the inhale lowers you and scoops everything in, and then the exhale is as everything draws to the center and you become that big conduit. And we'll do one more and see how effortless you can make this last round. And once you're up, stay there, and you can stay still if that feels good, or you can start to play with that circling, trying to keep equal weight in both feet. Again, that might limit your movement, but wake something different up. You can try circling both directions. Cool. And then come to center, bring the left knee in, tuck the toes under as long as it's not too intense, and we'll take our pause here at kneeling. If there's a different absorption pose that you'd prefer, be my guest. And then wherever you are, see if you can find that neutral pelvis that helps you stimulate the pressure in your core. So as you inhale, there is a sense of pressure building, a slight restriction of the expansion happens naturally as those muscles are engaged and working against the movement of the breath. And then feel the softness and release of the exhale. And maybe there is a sense of just that lightness at the base of the pelvis. It's not strong, it's not intense. You're not doing it with your mind. It's just naturally happening as the breath leaves the body. The diaphragm lifts, it pulls on the structure that pull on the pelvic floor. And next we'll be coming up to standing. You can do this however you'd like. I will be talking through a slow roll up, so if that feels good on the spine, you're welcome to join me there. Place the hands down, lift the knees, let the heels start to get heavy. Let yourself curl into a little ball, pushing into the fingertips and breathing through the whole spine. Make sure the neck feels supported. And then as you're ready, let the hips start to lift so that you're coming into a forward fold with knees deeply bent. You can move your kneeling blanket off to the side if you were using it. And then let the pelvis get heavy so the sits bones drop towards the back of the knees. Inhale, push down into the feet. Gather energy with the arms. And then as you get about halfway up, you can exhale, letting the arms float all the way up. And we're going to repeat that, starting with bending the knees, inhaling to gather. And then eventually, when it feels right, using the exhale for the second half of the movement. Move nice and slow, nice and smooth. Pause anywhere that the body wants to enjoy. And the next time you come all the way up, pause there, soft shoulders, take a couple of breaths here, neutral pelvis, see if you can feel that gentle pressure and that gentle release. As you exhale, notice how the legs interact with the base of the pelvis. Float the arms down, but continue to breathe in this way and see if on the exhale, as the diaphragm and the pelvic floor lift, if you can ever so gently traction the legs together without moving them and let the spine lengthen. We're not coming into an extended spine, so you're not arching. You're still in neutral, but it's almost like there's just a little bit more space between each vertebra. And then using this lightness and buoyancy, go for a little walk around your space. You can be a little extra dramatically bouncy if you're feeling it, or just however you're feeling, embody that with your walking. And when I feel a lot of support in my pelvis, my legs are swinging as I walk, I almost feel like the movement isn't coming from my hip socket, but it's coming from higher up. And it's funny because I have really short legs, but when I feel this way, I can take such long strides with my little teeny legs. It's like magic. So I invite you to notice if your legs are extra swingy. And then let's make our way back towards the mat. We'll be on the long edge of the mat. So for most of you, that's facing me. Feel free to grab a sip of water, and we will also go to the next musical track. Konalani because if you go to the long edge, you won't be facing me. Maybe just try it facing me, even though it means your feet will come off of the mat. I think that will work okay for this. So let's meet in Tadasana and look down at the feet. Bring them parallel as gauged by the second toe, and then anchor the big toe and ever so gently allow the thighs to spiral open. So the knees should be pointing forward. That's a great gauge of the muscles in the legs being on and supporting you. And then I'm going to turn just so you can see this movement. Send the hips back, float the arms forward for chair pose, and take a couple of pulses like this. And I invite you, without changing anything, to just notice how the legs are interacting with one another, and how as the hips sink back, there is this sense of support catching them, right? So you feel stability in the back of the pelvis. And the next time you come into chair, come up just about halfway so you're not so deep. Shift the weight into the right foot, get a little bouncy in the right leg, and make sure you're anchoring the right heel down. That's what's going to keep the pressure out of the knee, right? So you don't want to feel really any sensation in the knee. Start to circle the left foot behind you as the left arm mirrors the leg. And do this a couple of times. Might start to feel challenging on the right leg. You can take a break at any time. Try to keep the right leg completely unmoving. So it's just the left leg and left arm. And you might not go as far. Yeah, that looks great, Mom. Nice modification. And then we'll try the other side. So step the left foot out. You can keep the feet wide. We'll do a moment of chair pose and then come out of it just so that left leg is engaged. And then shift the weight into the left foot and start to circle the right foot behind. Remember, we don't want anything to move besides the arm and the leg. And this creates a lot of stability. See if you can start to feel that sensation of the inner thighs drawing up into the pelvic floor and the deep core. And then once you've got the hang of this movement, we'll go from side to side. So just stepping into a short straddle, bending the knee, and sliding the opposite foot behind. As you get more comfortable here, you can make the movements bigger, but that's not necessarily the goal. So just pay attention to what feels enjoyable in your body and try not to push or overdo any of these movements. The next time you come over to the right, we're going to add on. Shift the weight forward into the right foot and start to extend down into the right leg so that you can hover the left foot into tree, letting the foot land wherever's comfortable, just making sure the knee feels comfortable. And then let's try that a couple times on that same side. So the front knee bends, the leg slides out, and then push down into the front leg to weightlessly lift that leg. We're using this action, so maybe the left foot actually doesn't even need to land on anything because all these muscles are awake and ready to support us. That wasn't the plan, but it's feeling really fun. We can call that like weightless tree. And then let's try the other side. So the leg steps out, go over. And then once you feel ready, you can play with shifting the weight and letting that right leg get very light. And remember, it doesn't matter how high the right leg lifts. Instead, it's the feeling. We want this effortless feeling of feeling weightless and almost like, ooh, as I lift the right leg, my spine could get longer. Take one more. And then step the right foot out. Turn the toes forward if they're not already. And gently bend the knees a little bit. Start to hinge forward at the hips, melt the spine. The hands can stay on the thighs for this first round, or if the body's craving it, the hands can slide a little lower. Just make sure the spine feels supported and there's no pressure in the neck. Bend and extend each leg so the hips can sway. And then push evenly into both feet. We'll roll up in the way that we've been practicing. Send the weight back into the heels, anchor the big toes. Inhale, gather energy, sweeping up and overhead, and then exhale about halfway through. And let's take 2 more of these. So bend the knees, melt forward. That's your inhale. And then exhale to draw the legs together, connecting with that feeling of lightness and ease. Doesn't matter how far you bend. Just try to feel a fluidity and ease. And the next time you're up, pause there for a moment. Almost imagine that the body is dissolving and you're just a flow of energy. And we'll build on to our sequence. So shift the weight into the right knee and start to glide the left foot behind you, and then go right into that bounce. Pause here in tree as I demo the next thing. We're going to be playing with going back into our curtsy, but instead of going right into tree, we'll actually be stepping out towards a Virabhadrasana 2. And I want it to be a really small step so that the joints feel really nice and supported when you do that. So from wherever you are, let's meet in our curtsy. We'll do 1 tree, and then we'll play with that step. And make sure it feels nice and easy. There's not like a thud, right? So maybe it's a teeny tiny Vira 2, that's okay. And then once you've found your stance, make sure the left toes are turning out and there's weight in the left heel. Play with bending the left knee and swaying over the left leg, and then pushing into the left heel to rise up. And if you want to sync this with your breath, I'm playing with inhaling as I go into it and then exhaling for that leg drawing together, lifting motion. I didn't practice any certain arms here, so you can do whatever feels right, but I'm naturally feeling inhaling, this reaching out, and then that exhaling, drawing everything up. So it is sort of similar to the arms we've been doing, actually. And the next time you come up, bring equal weight into both feet. Feel that sense of the legs gently drawing together to lengthen the spine, and use it to sway side to side. It's almost like a volcano where the energy is rising up and expressing itself through your movement. And then turn towards me, and we're going to allow the feet to turn out slightly and pause for a moment in goddess pose. Shift the weight from heel to heel, trying to feel the musculature up from calves to hamstrings to the back of the pelvis. So you feel a lot of support, not just from the base of the pelvis, but the back of the pelvis as well. You can sway or hold steady. And then before we do the second side, we'll turn the toes forward, and 1 to 3 of these gathering forward folds that we did before. I say 1 to 3 so you can move at your own pace or pause anywhere that feels good. And the next time you're up, bend into the left knee, start to sweep the right leg behind, right arm reaches, and then we pulse into our tree. And then back to the curtsy. This time we practice our stepping out nice and small. It might be a different size than the other one, and try that a couple of times. Less is more. But once you've explored it, you might feel like, oh no, I want a little bit more, and then it's okay. Once you've found where the right foot wants to land, look at the back toes. Let them come in just a little bit here. And then equal weight in both feet as you bend the right knee and start to sway the spine over to the right, and then kick into the right leg to rise up. To add the arms in, we reach out as the knee bends, and we draw everything in and up as we come up. I'm naturally inhaling into the movement and then exhaling up. There's no right or wrong as long as you're breathing. And the next time you're up, turn the toes out for your goddess pose and allow the hips to start to lower, but think of the crown of the head lifting. So even though the hips are lowering, the spine is like getting longer and longer. If it feels okay, you can shift the hips from side to side. Bring your awareness to your sits bones and imagine the sits bones almost like drawing slightly towards one another. When I do that, I come out of the pose slightly and there's even more length in my spine. If it feels good, you can play with letting the feet come wider. Imagine you're just trying to take up as much space as possible in all directions. Nice. And then turn the toes forward. And let's actually heel toe the feet all the way in. We'll do a gathering forward fold from Uttanasana. 1 to 3, depending on your pace. Feel free to pause in the forward fold or anywhere else. And the next time you're up, let the arms release. We're going to go through that sequence one more time. I invite you to pause anywhere that feels really interesting. We'll have the option to add on a balancing pose, but you don't have to do it. This is sort of your time to play with all the strength and upward moving energy that you've cultivated. So let's start by stepping the feet out, bending the right knee, curtsy to the right, into tree, back to the curtsy, and then play with your step out. And you can take a couple of those if you want to, and you get the nice bending into the knee. And the next time you're up, option to pause in Virabhadrasana 2 like we did before, taking those side to side movements. Or if you want to play with Urdhva Chandrasana, bend into the knee just like we did before, shift the weight and play with letting the back foot float. You can take a couple of those, or if you're feeling solid, you can stay there and breathe. Make sure to keep the big toe down and anchored, and then you can allow the hips to open, stay springy in the left knee. As you're ready, the right foot will come down. We'll meet in Goddess, and here we take up space. Remember, it's not about stretching the feet as far apart as possible, but really drawing the energy up into the spine so you feel very supported. If you can't move, it means you've gone too far, but I can see all of you, you're moving beautifully. And then toes forward. Let's just do one gather of energy before we do the second side. Nice. And then the right knee bend. Oh, left knee bend. Curtsy. Tree. Back into the curtsy, into our step out with control. Then you melt over the leg and then kick into the leg to come back up. And the next time you're up, you can play with your side to side Vira 2 or bend into that right knee, shift the weight and get as light as possible. Even though the left leg's up, think about the legs drawing together to create that flow of energy up the spine that we've been playing with. Make sure you're breathing. And then eventually left foot comes down. We meet in our last Goddess. And we really have done a lot of work to create our support system here in Goddess. So enjoy it, play with it. You can play with where the feet are. You can change the angle of the feet, the angle of the knees. We're not going for a stretch sensation, but rather a sense of feeling really supported. If you want to add on here, you can add a side bend is really nice. And again, it's that same idea of taking up space. So you're always reaching and lengthening. And then we'll turn the toes forward and we'll come into our last forward fold. So that you can take your time here. Your hands can come onto the legs, the floor, whatever feels supportive for you. Make sure you're breathing. And again, notice how the legs can work together to help you lengthen the spine here. Take a couple more breaths. And then gently lower one knee at a time. So here, kneeling. Bring the hips to the heels. And I didn't have you guys bring blocks. I want to do one malasana. So if you need a block to do malasana, feel free to grab one. But just because we have done so much to create this support and lift, we'll play with a shifting malasana. And so one knee lowers as the hips shift to one side. You want to make sure that the knees feel supportive here. So the hips can be on a block if it's too much on the knees. And the reason we're moving is it keeps all the muscles in the legs on so we don't just dump into our joints. And see if you can feel that sense of the legs uniting to lift the spine. And then eventually we'll lower the hips all the way down and send the feet forward. Hands can come behind and ever so gently let one knee drop in at a time. Just make sure it doesn't feel like stretching on the inside of the knee. We want the movement to come from the hip socket and not from the knee joint. And then place the soles of both feet on the floor. Bring the left heel in towards the left glute and take a nice easy twist to the right. And again, you can still notice how the legs can work together, helping the spine lengthen as you twist from the bottom all the way up. Take a couple of breaths. You can also pause the music or go to the next track so it's not so energetic. And then stack the knees and we'll twist the other way. And again, feel how the legs relate to one another and how you can use their connection to help stimulate the pelvic floor and lengthen the spine. And then gently untwist. Bring the soles of the feet back to the earth. Take a couple of windshield wipers. And then we'll do those twists on the other side. So now the right heel comes into the right glute and ever so gently push down into the legs to stimulate that lift through the spine, twisting to the left, nice and easy. Make sure you don't feel it in your shoulders. If you feel it in your shoulders, you're doing too much with your arms and you want it to come more from the muscles around the spine. And then as you gently untwist, let the legs stack and twist all the way over to the other side. And take a couple of breaths. And last pose is optional. If you've had enough hip opening, you can skip this. But if you want one more nice, easy Baddha Konasana, and I love this pose because you can press the feet into one another to stimulate that connection that we've been talking about, right? That sense of the legs uniting and gently lifting the base of the core. And then resist the urge to go far here, but instead feel that upward moving support along the spine help you lift, and maybe you tip forward a little bit, maybe you don't. You can sway from side to side. And then extend the legs in front of you, flex the feet, and take one moment in Dandasana. If this feels really hard, you can lean back. That should feel a little easier. And we'll all pause the music. Have a sip of water if you'd like. We're heading into our restorative pose and Shavasana. So if you need to grab any warm layers or dim the lights or do any of those things that will help you be more cozy. And for our restorative pose, because we did so much hip opening, I wanted something that would feel really secure, bringing everything back together. So if you have a chair or a couch nearby, you can totally rest your legs up on that. If you don't, then a stack of some blankets works. And then the key ingredient, the most important part, is having a strap or a scarf with which you can bind the legs together. So I'm creating a loop in my strap. And then the strap, if you're on a couch or chair, the strap will just go around the space just above the knees. If you are working on blankets, the strap actually goes around the legs as well as the top blanket. That's going to make it a little more comfortable and secure. And then take a moment to tighten it. And the reason why the strap is so helpful is because the muscles of the inner thighs actually work when you're trying to relax to prevent the legs from like spilling outward. So when you have the strap, those muscles can turn off and relax completely and become restored and rejuvenated by our resting pose. So it's worth it. Take the time, do the strap thing. And then when you're ready, you can start to make your way onto your back. And it is fine to stay here for the duration of Shavasana, or eventually if you want to remove the legs and turn your blanket sideways so you just have that support that's more normal behind the knees, that's fine too. And before we release completely in Shavasana, I invite you to tune into your breath and notice if there's just a little more awareness in the base of the core, that gentle downward press as you inhale, and that very effortless rise as you exhale. And then let your awareness start to zoom out so it's no longer localized at one part of the body. Imagine just observing the whole body, gently breathing. And then let yourself start to relax anything that you're controlling. It could be something in your body, something in your breath. And find a sense of softness. You can imagine the forehead like the view of the ocean here at Konalani, just a spacious, vast ocean reaching out in all directions. And from this relaxed and open space, we'll rest for a little bit over 10 minutes. Let yourself stay relaxed. And direct your awareness towards your breath without changing it. And just notice your state of being. Sometimes it's easier to feel space between your thoughts, any worries, even any physical discomfort. And see if you can maintain this sense of spaciousness as you start to make gentle movements. You can draw the legs out from underneath the strap and hug the knees into the chest, or do anything that the body is craving, but try to actually enjoy each movement, even if it's really simple. Try to feel it, be there for it. And take your time coming up to seated and make any stops along the way. And as you come upright, grab anything you need to sit comfortably for the next 10 minutes or so. And find your way into your comfortable seat and notice if the work that we have done together today has affected your seat. Perhaps there's more support. Maybe you just don't feel anything, but sometimes, there's that little discomfort in the hip or the knee. And before we release the physical body completely, just notice the breath and notice that really subtle drawing together of the legs that happens naturally as you exhale. It's so tiny, just like 1% activation. But if you feel it, you can use it to sit up a little taller effortlessly without building any tension. And then just know that that's there for you, and you don't have to do it or control it or make it happen. And now we release our focus on the physical body, and we can drop into our heart center. So you're welcome to close the eyes or find a single gaze point and start to notice the sensation of the breath mingling with the heart. And see how relaxed you can be as you observe the heart, letting the breath work its magic, gently allowing the heart to expand, keeping your focus there. There's nothing that you can make happen, but by focusing and breathing and relaxing, you can create the right conditions for that energetic shift to occur. And I invite you to use the mantra Om Namah Shivaya with each breath. And letting the powerful syllables help you connect deeper and deeper to the heart. And the energetic work we do in meditation is really similar to what we were doing physically. In that moment of focusing and bringing the strength to the legs and the deep core, but then how we're able to use that to find a lot of space and freedom in the hips and the spine. And so as you inhale to the heart, you're bringing the strength of your focus. You're bringing that unity of all of your energy at a single point. And then as you exhale, there is a spaciousness that is available. You don't have to hold on to that point. You don't have to hold on to the work. You can release into it. You can relax and allow the practice to unfold. We'll conclude our practice with generating gratitude. And so you can bring the hands to heart center and keep your awareness at the heart. And as you gently breathe towards the heart, maybe there's already a feeling of gratitude, in which case you can just breathe into it and let it expand. And to help generate that feeling, if it's not there or you need help increasing it, you can think of people or things or places that you're really grateful for. And try to feel that spark that ignites when you picture a loved one or remember something exciting in your life. And really try to feel with what it evokes in the heart, more so than the image itself. And when you do feel something in the heart, breathe into that. Let that sensation grow and expand. And then eventually let that be so real that the image can start to fade away and you can just be with the true experience of gratitude. And as you breathe into it, allowing it to expand, you can imagine the heart starting to spill and overflow with this overabundance of nectar. And visualize that nectar traveling into the hands, letting the palms start to open like you're cupping a firefly. And then each breath, imagine that you're sending the gratitude, the abundant, overflowing gratitude into the space of the hands and eventually the arms. You can start to let the fingers blossom open and the arms start to lift. And eventually allow the arms to part, forming a huge bowl that you can fill with the rising up gratitude of the heart. And eventually, when you feel so full of this sensation, you can use an exhale to let it all rise straight up out of the crown of the head, up to your highest self and any of your cosmic teachers or Ishta-devis or deities you connect with. And the hands can float down and let yourself relax. Thank you so much for being here and for sharing this practice. Namaste. Enjoy the rest of your week. Please let me know if you have any questions, especially if the pelvic floor stuff is new. Don't be shy, but hopefully your body feels great and you can just spring into the next activity of your day or sleep very soundly if it's late where you are. Thanks for coming, Tammy. Sorry, it's a little quiet.